Manchester City 2, Arsenal 2. Your immediate thoughts, Jim Campbell?
Quite the ding-dong. Obviously disappointed not to get the 3 points given the way the game went, but at the same time you have to look at that as a hard-earned point, and City are obviously disappointed to not win themselves, but also they look relieved to get a point at the end. So it is an interesting measure of where both teams are. Frustrating that Leandro Trossard got himself sent off in the way that he did, because the game was shaping up to be very, very interesting. I would imagine that Arsenal's game plan would have been quite similar to what it was, but in far less of an extreme way, with 11 men on the pitch. But yeah, overall, when the dust has settled, it's a good point. It could have been more. It wasn't. We move on.
After a month of reminiscing about Barclays men, that was a proper Barclays bash.
It really was, wasn't it?
They hated each other.
Is that code word for anti-football, is it, Vish?
No, it's code word for it's nice to see two rivals who actually don't like each other.
Yes.
There was proper animosity there. And it's animosity that I think only grows with respect. If you don't think your rival in a particular season is going to keep coming at you, you don't develop a real hate for them. You kind of like think about them twice a season and you're done with it.
That's why Ferguson quite liked Wenger, in the later stages of Ferguson's career.
Yeah, in the latter stages, yeah, because obviously when Wenger comes on the scene, there's a thing of like,
couldn't
from Japan, and then suddenly he's like, oh shit, okay.
But I take the point you're saying, totally.
And it's just little things like you kind of like pick apart the fact that Arteta was once, part of Guardiola's stable, and I've really got a sense of, I think Guardiola's always respected Arteta, but I think for a millisecond there, even in that second half, actually, I think there was a moment where he slightly feared him and what he was capable of, and I think that is only a good thing.
I thought you were going to say that he was looking at that defensive setup and he was like, I never taught you this.
No, but that's Jim, you made this point
You've been
last
talking
week.
to Jose.
Yeah, but Jim, you made that point last week or maybe the week before actually. But there's a bit of Mourinho in the way you put away Spurs. Yeah, and it's a little bit like that, isn't it? It's like to have to. It's almost like a DC comic where, for Batman to really defeat Bane, he's got to go to the place that Bane was forged and climb out of the Lazarus pit.
Spoilers. Yeah. No, but you're right though. It's almost as if, oh no, he's been taking influences from other people.
Yeah.
He's been.
So Arteta said that they've been looking at this run of away games for since the summer, essentially since the fixtures came out, and you can see that there's a sort of bespoke plan for that. Now, 7 points from 9 from away trips to Villa Park, Spurs and City is pretty great, especially when you factor in they were away at Atalanta on Thursday night as well, which is, it's not an ideal trip.
Another point.
Yeah, another point. I don't think this is going to be how Arsenal play throughout the majority of the season. I don't think they're suddenly going to be grinding every single game. I think this period of these away games has had this particular plan, and that's why I mentioned earlier on that I think they probably would have played a little bit like this in the second half anyway. But it's a smart way to play away, and it's, if you're looking to, Arteta's always made the point he's trying to make Arsenal like a team who are right at the top table of world football and competing for everything they're in. You have to have a lot of different elements to your style, and this was absolutely the way to play that second half, especially with 10 men.
Are you saying that Arsenal are no longer a little horse, Jim?
I don't think they've ever been a little horse.
Oh, they have.
Yeah?
Oh, yes.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
My little phony.
Well, hey. Well, let's get into it then. So, where to begin? Probably at the start. Erling Haaland opened the scoring with his 100th Manchester City goal, equaling Cristiano Ronaldo's record, of course, 100 goals in 105 games. A phenomenally good record. And we thought when Messi and Ronaldo were at their pomp, and even, to be honest with you, as they were getting a little bit older, people thought these records are just not going to ever be challenged. These
they were like Dixie Dean levels.
Totally, yeah. Because you think about
longevity,
indeed, this will be around for decades. Well, here comes Haaland, and he's already equalled, didn't got the record, but he's still up there with regards to that one.
That's crazy, though, isn't it? Because Haaland has been ridiculous, and he's only equalled the record.
I know, yeah. So, but again, yes, exactly. It kind of makes both points even beefier, perhaps.
Yeah.
Lovely little sort of. Would you say it was a Tommy toe bash?
I wouldn't phrase it exactly like that.
Toe punt?
It was definitely a toe punt, which is fine, by the way. We were all taught that that's not allowed for
toe
some
punt
reason.
and toe bash are the same thing.
Sure.
I think there was a bit of outside of the foot, actually, because I think what he does brilliantly, and we mentioned it before, that it seems like his finishing is a bit more refined, is obviously he kind of opens himself up to go to the far corner, the traditional area where he'd hit that. And because it's rare, he decides at the last minute, and it might have been pre-planned, but he goes last minute and hits it with the outside of his foot. So he catches Raya off guard. So he has the brilliance of he gives Raya the eyes and also hits it early. I thought it was a brilliant finish. Yeah,
it was a great. It was glorious.
I think he makes it look really simple. It was the one moment where Gabriel and Saliba got it a little bit wrong. The space was there. Savinho had a brilliant game and was really good in that moment. But because he makes it look so easy, it sort of disguises how much he actually does. It's just the kind of the flowing motion of that run and finish.
His pace is often not talked about. We think about his finishing, of course, and his strength and all this, but an unbelievable gallop he's got.
But it's also what he does with the ball at pace as well. It's not just the pace itself.
Totally, yeah. And to be honest with you, as a sort of neutral, I mean, I think I'd probably, cards on the table, I'd probably rather Arsenal win the league just because it's just boring otherwise, and if Arsenal had won 4 in a row or 3 in a row, the Man City, that's how it goes. But ultimately, I'm a neutral in this, believe it or not, everybody. An early goal was just what the doctor ordered. Obviously not for Arsenal fans, but I think that because the games had been very, very cagey before, and of course they had the 0-0 last time at the Etihad in the league, I thought, oh, here we go. What are Arsenal made of, and how are Man City going to go and approach this? And of course, we didn't have to wait that long for the next goal. But before that, Rodri goes off injured.
Yeah, which is massive, isn't it? It's hard to know how it affected the game, obviously, because we don't get to see the game in which he played. But we all know the stats about how rarely Rodri loses. It's potentially looks a bad one, actually.
You saw on his face he looked quite distraught, didn't he?
Yeah, and this could be really damaging to them long term. So we'll yet to see what the extent of that is. Kovacic is a very good player, obviously, and City was still sort of more dominant on the ball.
But it shows you the system, doesn't it? That all those players are all singing from the same hymn sheet. Rodri goes off. An absolute beast of a midfielder. One of the best midfielders in the world.
Probably the best player in the world, I would argue.
It's a fair argument. He's in the conversation. There's no two ways about it. Goes off, and it looks like they haven't really missed him that much. I'm sure that they have. I understand they went 2-1 down, but the fact is that system and that machine that Guardiola has created at Man City is just quite phenomenal. Despite that, though, Arsenal find a glorious equaliser through Calafiori.
Yeah, stunning, really, in very many ways with Calafiori. But
finish wasn't bad either.
Yeah,
hey.
Bawdy. But you obviously the Kyle Walker thing, that whole part of it is interesting because I actually think he has time to get back, but I totally agree with the fact that if you call 2 players over, the captain specifically, you're in a situation where you have to then let the free kick play out. He
didn't walk back. I mean, he didn't sort of sprint back, but I don't think he should have to sprint back.
No, exactly. Yeah, if you're called over, then the referee has to restart the game with his whistle because that is just because people play different positions and you've deliberately called him out to where you are. So I get the confusion there, but there was still quite a lot to do.
Yeah, and we have sympathy with
of course,
with Walker and Guardiola. What did you think about Guardiola kicking the chair?
I quite liked it.
I did as well.
I thought there was a level of nimbleness there, which you can kind of see from his, from his like a physique and whatnot, that he will be agile in that way.
What did you think of Spanish Kevin Keegan? Looked like he was kind of trying to talk him out of it.
He did, yeah, and I wondered...
If you kick that seat, it's just going to spring back into position.
It's going to spring back and hit you in the nose, bloody nose. You turn around, your foot will be in a bucket, your other foot will hit into a rake.
It was a good advert for those nice comfy chairs they sit in.
Yeah, it was actually.
He didn't look phased at all.
It looked a bit memory foam as well because the imprint was in there.
It just got straight back up.
Yeah.
But yes, he was furious, of course. But
it was a stunning finish.
It was, yes. So you understand why. But as you said, there's still a bit of work to do.
Yeah.
And when the ball is played to Calafiori, it is not your typical defender's finish, Jim.
No, not at all. And I wonder if perhaps Ederson wasn't expecting him to shoot just because he's a defender in that position. And it's an unusual finish anyway for him to sort of curl it in that direction off his left. You so rarely see it. It was a bit of a lightning strike, though. I was thinking it reminded me actually of the Marcus Rashford goal last season, where he scored an absolutely brilliant goal at the Etihad. You're thinking, that's a great goal, but like 19 times out of 20 that doesn't go in. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking there's still a battle to be won here. And City were, the pattern of the game kind of continued as it had been, with City having more of the ball. So when Gabriel scored that header, I was like, oh, here we go then. Are we going to go and do a job here?
Well, you probably weren't that surprised because obviously minutes earlier he'd done the same thing.
Literally the same routine. Did you see the side by side?
Yeah,
in the match
yeah.
afterwards? It was absolutely the same routine.
It was, yeah. I mean, this whole thing with Arsenal, we saw it at Spurs, where Arsenal they go behind the goalkeeper, a lot of the players, and they pack the 6-yard box. Now, there's always this chat then about zonal marking and man marking and so on, and there's always criticism of zonal marking. You criticise both, but they did both. Carl Walker was man marking him, and he lost.
And he broke through both, and it was great having that side by side because he basically plays it like a wide receiver in the NFL because he's got fast feet to shift away from the guys covering him.
Yeah. And you've got to be quick to get rid of Walker.
Yeah, and he creates what they call separation, which is basically enough distance for you to be able to go and, whether it's receiving the ball and doing what you do, which is him then getting a run on the stationary defender who's zonal marking. And when he's got even, a couple of yards to run up in, there's only going to be one winner in that. Like, the man could win a header off the Burj Khalifa, and he missed that earlier chance, but this was just like, right, is he unplayable?
The speed of it is something else, isn't it? And also, the quality of the ball from Bukayo Saka is absolutely amazing.
Well, he just evades everybody.
It's consistently good as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's just an absolute monster at those set pieces, is Gabriel. We saw it at Spurs. And I just thought to myself, like, I don't know what it is, but Guardiola knows that's going to happen.
You can't, but I genuinely don't think you can stop it, because it's not about having someone Gabriel's size to man mark him, is it? It's basically about the inconvenience. So Walker's very strong. Yeah. Walker's very quick. So if Walker can jump with Gabriel, he can probably put him off enough to get their header.
Well, I suppose they did make a difference, wasn't it? Because it was Doku who was on Gabriel quite oddly. Yeah. And then they changed, and it was a fantastic goal. But of course, that wasn't the drama of that wasn't just the last bit of drama in the first half. Leandro Trossard was sent off for a second yellow card for kicking the ball away after the referee had blown his whistle. Arteta was furious. Now, it was different to the Doku one, as they talked about on Match of the Day too.
I think the Doku one, the explanation I saw of it was that the referee didn't see it at the time, and the VAR couldn't intervene for a yellow card anyway. Well, there's also I don't think he considered.
But also,
it to be
as Alan Shearer pointed quite rightly, the referee saying take the free kick is further back. And Doku then just sort of knocks the ball in that general direction. He's not going to play it straight to the player. Yeah. So I've no qualms with the Doku one. However, there is a wider discussion about this rule, which is such a sort of, I don't know. It's
Simon Lloyd's tweet yesterday about you have sympathy. I'll just read it out. I have sympathy with Arsenal, whereas Trossard is daft for doing it. It's a rule that's never ever going to be applied consistently.
Yes.
To which Miguel Delaney then quote tweets it and says, "It is silly from Trossard, but it basically just seems extreme pedantry when that pedantry is impossible to consistently apply."
And that sums it up for me.
Because even you could watch, like, when you watch the clip and Trossard goes to kick the ball and the whistle's blown, and he kind of like continues kicking the ball because it's the fucking sport.
Well, also, he is in that motion.
Yeah, and he's kicking the ball towards Martinelli, who's breaking on the left, for what would be like a counter-attack where there's no one in front of him. And at the same time, it's like, did he really fucking kick it that far? Yeah. There's a bloke on the floor. You're not going to take it quickly because there's a bloke on the floor. Yeah. And it's just this idea of, I mean, they summed it up. Miguel and Simon summed it up, summed it up brilliantly. Like, it's just pedantry for pedantry's sake, and they just feel because Rice was sent off for that, everyone's on it. So right, we just have to apply it, and they can't apply it.
No, I mean the Rice one to me was a sending off. We talked about that.
Yeah,
it's very different because the guy could have taken a free kick.
But
Rice essentially tackled.
Trossard's been sent off because Declan Rice has been sent off.
Possibly, but yeah.
I think what's happened in this instant is that it's possibly a little bit of an emotional failing on the part of Leandro Trossard. He's obviously very, very pumped up because it's late in the half. Yeah. He's gone in for a hefty challenge that's just essentially just trying to waste a bit of time. He's kind of still in the motion, but you almost see him hear the whistle.
Yeah.
But the thing is, as you've mentioned, this has been a problem. William Saliba was booked for it against Spurs as well, and it's a weird thing. It's like just don't do it. Like the rules are confusing and they're frustrating. but sometimes the rules are what you would. Sometimes the rules aren't what you want them to be.
Yeah.
You just have to be aware of that.
Well, Man City would agree with you.
You just got to. If you keep getting punished for something, but you don't like the thing, you've just got to stop doing it.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
I tried that in my speed awareness course.
There should be a 37 zone.
I get there quicker. What are you not understanding?
But I mean, that's a really good point, and I wonder if maybe if it is part of this kind of quote unquote Mourinhoization of Arsenal, where because teams used to do it all the time, like just disrupt them, stop them from taking the free kick quickly, let us get back into position, and if it was say like something that you've grooved, then it's harder to I suppose forget that behaviour because it was there for a purpose. I mean, obviously I'm just spitballing here, but. Yeah, it's such a strange thing, and Jim, you're right. Like when Saliba did it last week, you're like, "Come on, mate, you've just seen what happens here." Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. But Arteta was absolutely seething.
The post-match was amazing.
Yeah,
it was like him just trying to not get fined.
Yeah, totally.
But come on, mate, you're going to cost me 20 grand or whatever it is if you keep trying to make me say what I think.
And again, from perhaps a neutral point of view, it did feel like, right, so we know how the second half's going to play out. Because I thought with Arsenal 2-1 up, that's quite intriguing. However, despite it being such a game of kind of cat and mouse in the second half, I mean, it was extraordinary, the dynamic that Arsenal were basically saying, right, you know how it usually plays out for the last few minutes of a game if you're holding the lead? Oh, we're going to do that the whole half. 12.5% possession. I think Kai Havertz didn't complete one pass in the whole game.
Yeah, neither did Jurriën Timber, I don't think.
Well, which is even more incredible. I found it just absolutely enthralling.
Yeah,
it was
You had the Premier League's best defence, one might argue, against, without a shadow of a doubt, the Premier League's best attack. And the best attack looked so slow and laborious at times. I thought Guardiola, look, who am I to suggest? Mr. Guardiola, why don't you try this as a tactic? So I understand the absurdity of what I'm about to say. However, I will say it, damn it all, is he was still, as everybody does nowadays, using inverted wingers.
Yeah.
It was only when Grealish came on and started to go down the line, I thought, why not swap them over? Because actually what you're doing is you're cutting inside, and Arsenal, that's what they want you to do. They're totally stodging up, maybe go down and try. Easier said than done. And again, I'm sure if I saw that to Guardiola, he would say, who's that man? I'll never want to see him again. But,
I thought they were smart not to cross the ball.
Yeah, because you can get into it.
You're trying to beat 5 players.
Sure, you do have Erling Haaland in there, though.
But Erling Haaland, who is in the middle of those 5 players.
He is, but
it's the percentages, especially when everyone's that deep, is very low.
But when you say they were smart, but ultimately, though, Vish, they didn't really create anything. It was just a bit of a goalmouth scramble at the end.
They did. Raya made a couple of really tiny saves.
They had a lot of shots.
Yeah, but one of them came from an Erling Haaland header, though.
They didn't create anything sort of like clear and open, did they? But when a team is committed to defending in its entirety, that's going to be hard, isn't it? So you've got to find another solution.
So let me just clarify. I'm not saying that, oh, come on, Man City, you do this little thing and it would unlock the door. I'm saying I'm surprised they didn't at least try that a bit more, because
they had the time.
Well, they had the bloody time to do it.
131 charges. Try something different.
But I mean, it just seemed to be Arsenal were a bit like, yeah, that's right, and give it to Ruben Diaz on the edge of the box. Yeah. Thomas Partey played really well, actually.
He did.
He kept stepping out right at the right time and so on.
They were really smart at deciphering which player on the edge of the box was a threat.
Yes.
Because the number of times Diaz would get the ball and you'd be watching it thinking, shoot, man, it's Ruben Diaz. And the reason you was shouting to him to shoot was because he had space to shift it and shoot, and he wouldn't do that. So Arsenal were like, well, what's the point of going to him? And
which I thought maybe Guardiola might do something ballsy, like bring on Foden for Diaz and basically play to Foden. Right, well, you're kind of centre half, but don't worry about it. And, do you know what I mean? Like, really?
Edison, why don't you give Diaz the gloves?
Yeah, exactly. I honestly thought, could we see something outrageous from Pep here?
There was. You're right. It was intriguing. It was fascinating. The idea that they were both trying to work each other out, even little things like. There was, when there's a point where Jesus wins the ball late on essentially at the left back position, and he basically starts doing little circles, looking for contact.
Yeah,
and the contact is kind of there, but not enough to go down. Because City are like holding off, whoever the player was is like holding off him, knowing that he's going to try and take the foul.
Yeah.
But and in that moment, his control's really good.
Yep.
He's shifting his body weight brilliantly.
Yeah.
he decides not to like hoof the ball forward because you're giving it back to him. Tries to dribble out. They're kind of like pushing for territory here and there. Yeah, really intriguing.
Yeah,
but
I was impressed by how comfortable Arsenal looked with that sort of game mode, especially away at Man City, holding on to a lead with 10 men, where they're just coming at you wave after wave, and you are sort of setting up in that almost like a training exercise with defence versus attack, and they look very comfortable in it, which I thought was really impressive. I've seen some people sort of say that Arsenal were time wasting a bit and sort of like
they were
like laying on the floor a lot. I understand that because you've got to find a little bit of pressure release in a situation like that. But there's an amazing stat from this game, from this half. The ball was in play for 35 minutes, which is the most of any half this season, and that's a very, very clever ploy from City because they're trying to just exhaust Arsenal, not give them any break, like just make it relentless pressure. And in the end, that did tell. But I think to get away with a point, I was not expecting that at half time.
The last thing I'll say on the game, there was enough time for Man City to get a winner there had Haaland not barged over Partey.
Yeah. I did think
it was so dumb because he gave the referee, as it ticks over to 99 minutes, when there should have been at least maybe 2 more minutes. It gave him an excuse to be like, let's all have a lie down now. This is ridiculous. But I think he's skewered them a little bit there.
Yeah. Did it take the edge off it that it was that beautiful boy, England's Rose, John Stones, who got the goal, Jim?
That it was a goal took the edge off it.
Do you know what, right?
It doesn't matter who scored it.
Honestly, David Raya nearly made the greatest save of all time from that. When he threw his leg up, I was like, oh my goodness, that would have been like an overhead, a blindsided overhead kick from the keeper, nearly saved it. But it didn't. And it went in, and Stones got the goal. And Stones was one of the Man City players who had some sort of barbed comments, if you like. Maybe he's a very inoffensive chap, but he's certainly. I
love the fact because of how he's introduced him there as England's Rose. He's trying to excuse him, but another foreigner, Bernardo Silva, unbelievable.
I thought John Stones was very well balanced and fair, whereas Bernardo Silva, what he said, I couldn't believe it. No, John Stones said, call it dirty, call it clever, whatever you want. Bernardo Silva was interesting when he said there was only one team to came to play football. Asked about the difference between Man City's title tussles with Liverpool and this new arrival they have with Arsenal, he said maybe that Liverpool have already won a Premier League, Arsenal haven't. Liverpool have won a Champions League, Arsenal haven't. Liverpool always faced us face to face to try and win games. And I love this. Pep Guardiola, as we know over the years, and obviously now his players, they love an ideological battle as well. And they're trying to frame this now, that Arsenal are like a Mourinho side. And you've already mentioned that, Jim, and I can understand why, but that they're the anti-football guys. We're the kind
We've won the argument.
Yes, a little bit like that.
He raises an interesting point. I actually agree with him to a point.
I know, I do as well.
About Liverpool as a rival, because Liverpool's success is organic.
Yeah.
Liverpool's success actually means something. And Liverpool are an organisation that have integrity. Right. And they're not just the plaything of the royal family of another nation state. So, yeah. To a point, I agree with Bernardo Silva.
Really? We were at the boxing on Saturday.
Toy.
Yeah, we were at the boxing on Saturday night singing the Saudi anthem, by the way. Was that another thing? But anyway, I think we should probably move on. We could talk on and on and on about that game because it was stunning stuff. And what a Super Sunday it was. A point apiece, though, ultimately, Jim. Keeps the title race alive at this early stage.
We shouldn't be praising that in September, should we?
That's how good Man City have been, though. Oh, dear. I swear they won the league in October one year, but anyway, it might just be me. All right, coming up in the second half, red cards galore on the South Coast. Nicholas Jackson emerges as a late Ballon d'Or favourite, and Liverpool turned it on once again. See you in a moment.
Sosa, gol, Sosita, gol! Na 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 na, na 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 na, hey, Ramon Sosa, na 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 na, na 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 na, lo hizo el paraguayo, 2-2 empató Ramón.
Welcome back to the Football Ramble, everybody. Thanks to friend of the Ramble, Gary, for sending us that clip. You can become a friend of the Ramble too by heading over to patreon.com/Football Ramble. You'll get access to the Discord where you can chat with us and other Ramble listeners, whom are fine people I can vouch for. You'll also get ad-free episodes of the Ramble up front and on the continent. And a reminder that if you want to get in touch with your stories, questions for the mailbag, or in response to anything at all, then email us, show@footballramble.com. That's show@footballramble.com. Right then, gentlemen. Liverpool 3, Bournemouth 0. Liverpool finished the weekend in second after beating those South Coast slugs, Jim. It's a bit harsh, isn't it? Actually,
Yeah,
what's
I'm
Bournemouth ever
surprised at
done
the phrasing.
Yeah, what's Bournemouth ever done to me, Jim? Nothing.
It's quite warm there, isn't it? It's like
warm.
Isn't there like
It's at least 5 degrees warmer than any part of the UK.
Are you talking about the,
that's what
Sandbanks microclimate?
Yeah, but isn't that a thing? That's
Sandbanks
a thing,
is not in Bournemouth, though.
No, but Bournemouth. I mean, he distracted me with your Sandman.
Not in Bournemouth is a lovely place, beautiful beach.
Yeah.
Beautiful beach. I don't know if there's a higher concentration of slugs there or not. I'm talking literally, not about the people.
Probably midges if it's that warm.
True. Apologies, Bournemouth, but you lost the game. Sorry about that. But Liverpool, though, their response since losing to Nottingham Forest, Jim, has been impressive. An away win in Milan, of course.
Yeah.
And another straightforward victory in the Premier League.
Yeah, really comfortable away win in Milan as well. Because they conceded so early, it really very quickly, you're like, oh, they're obviously going to win this game. And the Forest game seems more and more like a blip, doesn't it? And
Totally.
As we said, after that, they had chances in that, and on a lot of other days, they would have won that game.
Also, Forest, and we'll talk about them in a minute, have started the season very well.
Impressively. Yeah. Like, I'm almost taking it personally at this point, as I hope you two are as well.
Well, Nuno obviously is trying to mug us off, so credit to him for that.
Got to use criticism as fuel, I suppose. Yeah.
I'll send them some lasagna for next week.
I'm very, very impressed with Luis Diaz so far.
Oh, my goodness.
Possibly the standout player of the season, aside from obviously Erling Haaland.
He's an early runner for player of the season.
Yeah. It's 5 goals already.
Yeah.
And the first goal, like, I know in theory that's a simple thing for a professional footballer to do, but I still loads of people are talking about that goal as if it's like really, really simple and the goalkeeper's like entirely at fault. But Diaz has a lot to do in a very few actions and executes it perfectly. Like he's in the sort of form where it feels like he's barely thinking about what he's doing. It's all instinctive. He's a couple of steps ahead of himself.
Yeah, he's such a tenacious player, and we knew this before he came to Liverpool. I didn't see that much of him. He was at Porto, but his stats were very impressive. Hence Liverpool buying him, and you've got to be decent to play in a Jurgen Klopp side, of course. And he did take to it. Great moments, great contributions. But some people said, especially last season. I know last season was slightly funny for Liverpool. It was still a decent season. He was a bit patchy at times. Whereas this season, my goodness, he's already got 5 goals in the league. I think last season he got 8. So like you see the improvement there, and again, credit to the manager, Arne Slot, who's come in, and basically not disrupted too much stuff. It's interesting what Joe Hart was saying about brother Brendan Rodgers at Celtic. He said the way he came into Celtic, because Postecoglou had great success at Celtic and had done really, really well, was very popular. And Rodgers came in and just thought, right, let's not rock the boat. Let's kind of continue this, keep it going, and I'll start to make little tweaks here and there, and then I'll really start to put my stamp on things as we go. Because obviously you can't replicate with 2 different men with 2 different, very cultural different backgrounds and footballing ideologies, etc., etc. And I'm sort of getting a sense of that with Slot a little bit here. They just come in like, okay, fine, I don't need to do much, because Klopp left them in such a healthy place. But can you get a little bit more out of some of these players? And so far with Diaz, case in point, he's absolutely flying. Yeah,
I mean, he's always had that, I think, Diaz.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, he's always been an incredibly tenacious player. I think the Bournemouth performance, dare I say, a little like hints of Suarez about it?
Yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
But he's got everything. I mean, he can beat a man. He can latch on to through balls. All that kind of stuff. He can
fast,
head the ball.
He's fast off the ball. He's fast on the ball.
Yeah, but his heading as well is superb as well. Like again, he's just got everything.
And
it's worth pointing out as well that he was living through some very horrific circumstances last season. So that might explain.
A very good point to make. And by the way, as I'm saying, he's got everything. Again, we haven't just discovered this, it, but when you get sort of maybe reminded of it, so it's so exciting to see a player like that.
Yeah,
really, just hit the ground running.
He looks like the kind of player who is the most fun to play with. Yeah. Because you can set your watch by all the things he does, whether it's closing down or what he does with the ball from out wide. It's particularly when, I wouldn't say it's been a Liverpool problem, but it's certainly been the case with certain individuals when they try to match them up in that front 3, is getting the right balance of almost like selfishness and teamwork.
Yes.
Yeah. And Diaz seems to be like a perfect conduit for what the other 2 would want to do.
Totally.
And, just to, I suppose, move on to the middle of that 3, it is always a joy to see Darwin Núñez scoring goals. Especially from absurd angles
Yeah.
where there's no value in shooting from there, particularly when there are two people free in the middle.
Yeah.
And he just bends it in off the post.
He celebrates twice, doesn't he? He celebrates scoring for his team and scoring against your team.
Yeah. I think when you hear Darwin Núñez scored, you're like, oh, I'm looking forward to see that.
Yeah.
If you
definitely.
if you can't watch the game.
I'm interested in their midfield setup at the moment. They faced a lot of shots, 19 shots, which is the most they've faced at Anfield in a decade, which is potentially a bit of a worry going forward. It doesn't seem to be too much of a problem at the moment because there's such a sort of amazing attacking force. But it is an interesting trio in there. Obviously, Alexis McAllister's a pretty tough tackler. Gravenberch holds onto the ball really well. Dominic, that's boss-like, does a lot of just really good stuff in general, a bit higher up. But do you wonder if that might be an issue later on that teams will be looking to exploit, that they don't have a more kind of traditionally minded defensive player?
In terms of going deep, potentially in the Champions League or...
I mean, I think between Gravenberch and McAllister, they've got the qualities they need just spread across a couple of players.
Yes.
So it might be that they find a smart solution to it. And Endo is in there, or he doesn't seem to sort of be too trusting of him yet.
Yeah, I really like Szoboszlai because he embodies all the things I like about football in that he looks cool and he sprays the ball about and he bangs it.
Handsome as well.
And he's,
That's what you like about football.
yeah, that's my favourite bits, yeah. But I do wonder, having described him in that way, if there's just a little too much luxury there.
Ooh.
And I don't know...
Bearing in mind how industrious, and I don't mean that at all in a disparaging way, but how industrious Klopp's midfields have been.
Yeah, but even, when he played under Klopp last year, I was always a little bit like, his highlight reels are brilliant. It's the other bits that like, where is Szoboszlai, basically?
Yeah,
he'll pop up with a banger from like 30 yards. I won't necessarily go in, but good on you for hitting it from that far.
Sure, I know what you mean.
But there's, I'm not really, and to be fair, like I don't watch him week in, week out, but I'm always a little bit like, I'm really glad you're playing. I don't really know the kind of, I suppose, the extremes of your defensive work, if that makes sense, because which is primarily like all midfielders in a three need to do an element of that. And he's the one I'm not like unsure of him, but I'm just it feels like there is an upgrade there somewhere, even potentially within their squad, in say like Curtis Jones, for example.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And yeah, I do know what you mean about the midfield in general. I mean, look, it's very, very good. Let's not be silly here, but in terms of can they keep the pace with Manchester City and Arsenal?
Yeah, we're talking about those last
indeed,
percenters.
you're
really,
talking last stage of Champions League and all that kind of stuff. So,
I mean, they weren't far off it last season.
No,
and as we've said, there's been consistency in the handover.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Gentlemen, I want to turn our attention to Brighton 2, Nottingham Forest 2. All the drama came late on in this one. It was a good game, but Morgan Gibbs-White was sent off for a second booking late in the game, and then both managers were sent off. It was just like proper dominoes, wasn't it? It was just like you couldn't take your eyes off. It's like, hang on, whoa, there's another one. There's another red card.
What were they so angry about? This is what I don't get.
Well, so the referee, obviously, when Gibbs-White goes in, it's a hefty challenge.
It's a yellow.
Well, so a second yellow is what he got. I mean, of course, years ago, that would have just been seen as a hefty, as a good old-fashioned solid tackle. And the referee does say, no, he got the ball. But
so you're saying proper old-school football men, Fabian Hurtler and Nuno Espirito Santo, were like, oh, it wasn't like this in my day.
Yeah, well, I just think the country and the game's gone mad.
Yeah.
When I saw that tackle and the referee said...
A tackle from one of us.
Yeah, exactly.
A Brit. Fellow Brit.
Exactly. When I saw that and the referee said he got the ball, I thought, we've got our game back. And then he got sent off and I thought, well, the game's gone to the dogs. No. So a hefty challenge goes in and the referee says he's got the ball. Brighton not best pleased about that because you could see the player was hurt. And then the fourth official, that's what the chat was, wasn't it? It was Anthony Taylor, seemed to have suggested to the referee, you might want to give him a yellow card for that. And then it all kind of kicks off. And because it wasn't VAR that gave it, VAR wouldn't have done that unless it was a straight red card. And Nuno Espirito Santo wasn't best pleased. It was funny, though, to see how they were both sent off and then they didn't do the post-match interviews after, presumably straight to the change room, straight to the early shower for the managers. But, yeah, the drama, it really was a super Sunday, I think, Jim, it's fair to say. Two twos. However, though, Roy Keane said that Matt Sells should be fined a week's wages for letting that Danny Welbeck free kick in.
That was like him setting the tone of his Super Sunday, wasn't it? That
Yeah.
he was on one. That was a big tackle early on, opinion-wise.
Well,
for Roy Keane.
it was a bit like going very, 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 very briefly back to the Arsenal-Man City game when he said, I don't know why people are praising Arsenal. I mean, they're letting 2 goals. You know, it's just like it's so black and white. It's just there's the stat. I don't give a damn what the journey was. That's the result. But I mean, look, I'll tell you something. Is it ridiculous, Vish? And you usually pull me up on these things to say that 33-year-old Danny Welbs could get a recall for England.
You know, the worst thing is,
Come on, we were on the stage
when I saw the angle from behind the goal.
Yeah.
I recalled when maybe a couple of months ago, actually ahead of the season, when you said, "Would you have Welbeck back?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, yeah, like I would." And then
As a Man United.
yeah, Manchester United.
We should say because you love both equally.
Yeah.
You know.
And as the ball rippled into the side netting, I thought, how many people need to get injured for him to get an English goal? Solanke, he scored, but he could get hurt quite easily. Ivan Toney's out of the picture.
Watkins is playing well.
Ivan Toney's not more out of the picture than Danny Welbeck is.
He's not in the country, is he?
No, he's not. I don't know, Jim.
What's Lee Carsley's morals like? I know he doesn't like singing. Where are your scruples, Carsley? Pick our Welbs. He's not even ours. He's not even mine.
He doesn't like singing. Oh dear, yeah. And when Welbeck wriggled around and nearly scored, it was a good save from the keeper. I thought there was
It's great to see him doing it at 33.
Come on, everybody.
I wonder if he's like. It seems to be that he's playing. I don't know if he's playing more in terms of appearances a season. He's definitely playing more in terms of minutes per game.
Hurtela's getting the best out of him.
Yeah, but even last season as well, he certainly stays on for longer. Is what I mean.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And I wonder if he's doing anything different. Like, do you remember? Obviously, it was a smallish window, but there was that 2-year period where Ledley King had sussed what he needs to do in training, which is basically not train and swim, and was got on a consistent run that got him into the England squad and whatever. With Welbeck, it feels like there's something a bit different there because he does feel like he's just more. He's more athletic on the field and he can give a bit more and give more time as well.
Yeah, and I
he seems to have cracked something behind the scenes because he's on free kicks now. What?
Oh, come on. Yeah, well, when you're playing with that kind of confidence and so on, then why not?
Yeah.
Yes. Teenager Jack Hinchelwood scored a lovely header.
He did.
We should mention that.
One of those ones where he hung in the air.
Yes.
Which I think is entirely because we see it in slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
That's where that phenomenon comes from. Brilliant header, though. Really, really confident as well.
Yes.
Are these the 2 most fun teams in the league at the moment?
Definitely. There was I watched this and I thought there was an element of like, I reckon you're both growing into a lot of people's second favourite teams there. Because,
and Brighton, you kind of get that, right?
Yeah,
Forest, this is fair play to them.
They are personally mugging us off, and we have to accept that. But it reminds me of sort of
they're currently mugging us off.
Hey,
Marinakis is still in the picture.
Exactly,
He's
which
our
I think was behind all of our thinking. Let's be honest.
Yeah, you can't.
He might be
blame us.
managing the team by the end of the
Forest
season.
fans, you can't blame us, surely.
I'm sure some of them will find a way.
But if Nuno can get into this side, like again, Wolves Nuno rather than Spurs
this
Nuno.
is exactly what I was going to say. It's easy to forget because at the end of sort of Nuno's Wolves tenure, he'd been kind of painted as a very sort of defensive and pragmatic manager. But when he was first in charge of them, when they first came up into the Premier League, they were very sort of like gung-ho and swashbuckling. And Forest have a bit of this feel about them. And he's using his bench really well because, as we have bafflingly failed to see, they've actually got a really good squad.
Yeah. Well, you're right to say about his bench. Would you call it sheer wizardry so far from Nuno?
He does look like a wizard.
I want to see him wearing a wizard's hat at some point.
He's got Warlock energy, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's having a
Warlock, not Warnock, we should say.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Warlock's not a Warlock. Warlock's not a Warlock. He's
somehow much darker than that.
Yeah.
He does live down Cornwall way.
Yeah, he's under a bridge, basically.
I think we should leave that there.
Well, I was just going to say very quickly that Forest have a really fascinating set of games coming up. They've got Fulham at home, they play Chelsea away, and then they've got Palace at home before their Midlands derby against Leicester City.
Why not?
So there's 4 games there where it's like, we could really see like how genuine this is. And
see what you mean.
4 very exciting games as well.
Indeed. We finish our Premier League roundup by talking about West Ham United 0, Chelsea 3. Nicholas Jackson has now scored more non-penalty goals since the start of last season than Alexander Isak, Son Heung-min, Mo Salah and Kai Havertz. Now, I know penalty goals count, but I thought that was worthwhile saying?
He's quietly efficient, isn't he, Jackson?
Yes.
He got a decent return last season. I forget what the actual number was, but it's a lot of strikers would be happy with it. I met some nice Chelsea fans after the show on Friday, and obviously you caveat that by reminding everyone that people said Ted Bundy was very charming, for example. But they seemed very excited, sort of quietly optimistic about the way this season might go, and I don't think they're wrong to. I don't think it's outrageous to sort of suggest that Chelsea could look at that fourth spot and think we can have that.
Yeah. Yeah, that wasn't the outrageous bit of what you said, really, was it?
Still thinking about the Ted comment.
Bundy, not the other one.
Yeah,
no, it's Todd Bowley, yeah.
Or Bill's mate.
Well, actually, it sounds like you've mixed the letters up.
And let's stop that there.
Well, with Jackson, we always saw the materials, didn't we?
Indeed, yes.
It was clear that he was a good player, and there was a lot there. And they were essentially trying to hothouse him, weren't they? By starting him last season and just be like, right, just work it out. We're going to give you as much time as possible to work it out. And he seems just a lot sleeker now. I mean, it was like, those finishes, even the one with his outside of the foot, another outside of the foot finish, one-on-one. Might have gone with his left foot, might have tried to go for the other corner, but just did it on instinct, really, and it paid off. And
we have to say that, West Ham are very charitable.
Oh, Fabianski in particular.
Yeah.
Come in, sir. Like, he really couldn't have made it easier for Jackson. He for both of his goals.
Oh, he was like the front of house at at a restaurant, a very friendly restaurant. But I mean, the defending,
it's fascinating, isn't it?
Bloody hell!
Because I'm not saying Ward-Prowse, being shipped out is the root of it, but it does feel like they didn't think of just having someone there full time during a match. Just have someone standing in the middle. Because actually, this is the reason that West Ham move on from Moyes and get in Lopetegui, or actually just move on from Moyes, is because they want a stylistic change. Yeah?
Sure.
So Lopetegui comes in, and with any kind of change like that, you do need time and resources for it to come to pass. Now, they signed 11 players over the summer. I appreciate not all of them are starters, but they signed 11 players. One of them, Crescencio Somerville, had a pretty good hour or so before he was taken off and there were boos. But you need time to do that. And their time feels already up because of the number of games they've lost. The first time they've lost their first three home games of the season.
It's looking bad for Lopetegui.
No, I think they've got to stick with him. Obviously, like you've got to look at Andoni Iraola in particular as a very recent example of how actually, if you're implementing a very, very new style, which they are doing, it's rarely straightforward. There's going to be a period of pain and growing pains, and you've got players who are used to the David Moyes style, which is very, very different. Like you look at players like Vladimir Sofal, for example. He's not very likely to immediately be able to adjust to that playing style.
And that is a very, very fair point. I mean, but with Iraola, was it as dicey as this? I mean, I do remember the start was a bit patchy. I think,
but you could see there were green shoots.
There were green shoots, and also a young manager who's quite, untested. And
also they didn't.
Lopetegui's much more experienced.
Yeah, and they didn't necessarily move on from someone who they trusted implicitly, or they essentially leave Moyes and West Ham depart on broadly good terms. Really.
Yes.
But. I'm not saying that he needs to go or it's time for him to go.
No, but it's looking bad.
But
he's under pressure already.
Yeah, and it's a fan base and a upper management that aren't necessarily famed for their patience.
I think he'll be fine. I think he's going to have a lot more time and grace than you'd expect.
I hope so, because it'd be interesting to see what they come up with, really, especially with him, as you said.
Sure, but it's been a shitey start.
Oh, it's without a doubt.
And the pressure on with West Ham, I think the earlier point, though, Vish was saying how it's a stylistic change. You think to yourself, right, okay, thank you, Mr. Moyes. You did a good, solid job, but maybe,
love to have you back a third time.
Yeah, that could be it. No, we understand why they moved on from Moyes, okay? So we're not going to rehash all that chat again. And it's kind of like, right, we've got this guy who's experienced in the Premier League as well. Right, come on, what have you got? And so far, it is looking pretty crap. And to lose to a side who they have a bit of rivalry with, it's fair to say, in that manner,
3-0.
Yeah, it's tough. It's early days, but
it's very early days. They're only 3 points behind Manchester United.
But they've been
3 points away
really,
mid-table.
really crappy
Yeah.
early days.
And it's also actually Chelsea are a nightmare opponent for this sort of comparison, aren't they? Because, Maresca has hit the ground running in far more chaotic circumstances, albeit with a, much better squad at his disposal.
Yeah,
and he's taken it. He's taken to it like a duck to water.
Like I say, what he did with Leicester and so on, I thought this was going to be good for Chelsea with Maresca. And he was quite punchy after the game, I think it's fair to say, saying, I'm very happy, but it's quite easy. If they don't buy into his ideas, the players, then they don't play. And interestingly enough, there's talk about Ben Chilwell coming back into the squad. He's been training with them again, so he might be thrown a lifeline.
Which is also, again, a sign of smart management, isn't it? Because you've got to use the resources at your disposal.
Yeah, indeed. Right, gentlemen, let's finish with this. Former Chelsea boss, Jose Mourinho, Fenerbahce manager, of course, lost 3-1 to Galatasaray in his first intercontinental derby. Ooh, that's unlike Mourinho to lose a game like that.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
He skipped the press conference after the game, and the Galatasaray X account had an absolute field day as they posted a picture of Jose captioned with the crying one.
They don't know what they've done, do they? They don't know what they've done.
Yeah. He's
the
You thought
shade and snark
Souness planting a flag in the centre circle was bad. Ooh, boy.
What do we think now? I mean, does Mourinho have it in the locker still to kind of go, right, we're going to have him?
I think if you poke him enough.
Yeah, I think by the sounds of it, it's the only thing he's got left in the locker, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. After the game, Mourinho said, we concede goals from 2 throw-ins. Our opponent did not outplay us, but I congratulate them.
Even that used to be spiky, didn't it?
It's chilling though, isn't it? Because because it's not spiky. It's like, oh, what's coming?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good point. Good point.
I don't know, Jim.
I don't think the fire's burning inside as harshly as it used to.
I think Saudi Arabia's calling. Well, they're definitely calling. I think he's
Sure,
just
he
going to
might
go.
now be answering.
I think he's literally just going to go.
Unknown number again. What?
I think he's just going to go, bollocks. Get me out of there. Just a big old payday for Mourinho because, he's short of a few quid.
Thank you for watching a clip from the Football Ramble podcast. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an upload. A single upload. Don't miss out on the uploads. The uploads are important.